Welcome. We will now see the first unit, which is systematics. Systematics covers history and development of entomology, evolution of insects, and important insect and arthropodan groups. We will see their characters up to order level, and then their habits, habitat, and their distinguishing features. Before going into that, we will have a few important definitions. Systematics is the scientific study of kinds and diversity of organisms. So, systematics involves both the diversity of the organisms as well as any relationship among the groups of the organisms. And taxonomy is the classification of those organisms and what are all the basis principles procedures involved with the classification. What is the theory and practice which is behind the classification, those will be dealt under taxonomy. And classification itself is the process of ordering of organisms into the groups based on their relationships as well as the diversity. Now, taxonomy is further classified into three: alpha taxonomy, beta taxonomy, and gamma taxonomy. As we had already seen, taxonomy is the process or the theory on and the practice of classifying. So, when classification is concerned, first of all, the characters will be named out and the species will be given the names. So, characterization and naming will be dealt by alpha taxonomy, and after naming and characterization, the species should be arranged in a hierarchy, starting from the kingdom, ending up to species or even subspecies level. So, that arrangement of species in a natural system is coming under beta taxonomy. And further, after giving an arrangement, the biological aspects of the taxa should be studied, and we will compare the intraspecific populations, whether how they have evolved and what is the phylogenetic relationship among those groups and how speciation process takes place, and all of that will be dealt by gamma taxonomy. So, biological aspects of taxa and studies of intraspecific population, speciation, and evolutionary trends will come under gamma taxonomy. Next, numerical taxonomy. So, the affinity or the similarity between the taxonomic units will be given a numerical evaluation. So, the amount of relatedness or closeness between the taxa will be evaluated and a number will be given to such type of relations, and based upon their affinities and based upon the numerical value, how the units are ordered or arranged. This comes under numerical taxonomy. Next, phonetics. Phonetics means classification only based on the visual recognition of characters. The morphology is given the utmost importance when it comes to phonetics. So, their evolutionary history and everything else is disregarded, and only morphological similarity is given a very important place in terms of classification. This type of classification is called phonetics. Then comes the next type of classification, which is cladistics. The cladistic type of classification will be done based on the recency of common ancestry. So, the ancestors will be taken into consideration, and from the ancestor and how recently the ancestry has been divided, and that will be given importance in terms of cladistics, which will lead to ignorance of the similarities and differences between the existing organisms. So, no matter how the morphological similarities or differences exist between two groups, only the ancestry is taken into consideration in terms of cladistics. Next comes the chronistics. Chronistics, in chronistics, the time of origin of the group or the taxa or the origin of the cladistic separation will be taken into consideration. Next one is phyletics or phylogenetics. Phyletics is a subset of phonetics, so it is a further classification inside within the phonetics, where the recognition of systems and their evolutionary relationship will be taken into consideration, and for this recognition many characters are used. First one is phonetic similarities and the branching of the sequences. When the branching took place at the time of cladistic separation, everything will be taken into consideration in terms of phyletics or phylogenetic type of classification. Next, we will see a very brief history of entomology. We will just highlight the very important points. First one is 1758, where the 10th edition of Systema Naturae was published by Linnaeus, and this was the earliest record of insects. Next, in 1785, in Calcutta, the Asiatic Society of Bengal was started. In 1883, Bombay Natural History Society was started, BNHS was started, and their contributions were made and they were published in the Journal of Bombay Natural History. So, after the foundation of these two organizations, Asiatic Society of Bengal and BNHS only, the attention was given to more scientific studies in India particularly. Then comes 1901. 1901, Lionel D. Niceville was appointed as the first entomologist to the government of India. So, Lionel D. Niceville was appointed as the entomologist to government of India, and after 2 years in 1903, Professor Maxwell Lefroy succeeded Niceville as the government entomologist. So, first government entomologist will be Lionel D. Niceville, because in 1905 the IARA, current IARA, which was then called Imperial Agricultural Research Institute, was established in Pusa. So, this institute was later shifted to New Delhi, and it became the current IARA with Professor Maxwell Lefroy appointed as the first imperial entomologist. So, since Lefroy was succeeded the Niceville as a government entomologist. So, government entomologist, if they are first entomologist, that will be Lionel D. Niceville, but the first imperial entomologist will be Professor Maxwell Lefroy. So, Lefroy had written 2 books, Indian Insect Pests and Indian Insect Lives, and further subsequently other states also, they have started appointing their government state entomologists in the year 1912, 1919 and 1922 in the states of Madras, Punjab and Uttar Pradesh respectively. And in the year 1912, Plant Quarantine Act was enforced. Next comes the very important act, District of Insect Pest Act. It was enforced in the year 1914, and in the same year, the first government entomologist of the Madras state, his name T.B. Fletcher, he published a book, Some South Indian Insects. Then in the year 1921, the Indian Central Cotton Committee was started in order to investigate on the pests of cotton, and in the year 1925, Indian Lac Research Institute was established, which is currently known as IINRG, located in Namkum, Ranchi, Jharkhand state. So, in the year 1935, Hem Singh Pruthi succeeded T.B. Fletcher as the then imperial entomologist, and he made efforts to bring lay foundation to the Entomological Society of India, which happened in the year 1938. So, even it was Hem Singh Pruthi who laid the efforts and who made the foundation. It was Afzal Hussain who was the first president of Entomological Society of India, and the vice president only was Hem Singh Pruthi and Ramakrishna Iyer. So, the first president of Entomological Society of India is Afzal Hussain, and the society was laid in the year founded in the year 1938, and the official publication of the Entomological Society of India is Indian Journal of Entomology. In the year 1939, Locust Warning Organization was established, and in the year 1940, T.V.R. Iyer published the book Handbook of Economic Entomology. And Directorate of Plant Protection was started in the year 1946, and M.S. Mani has had written his book General Entomology in the year 1968, and in the following year, Hem Singh Pruthi has had written Textbook of Agricultural Entomology, and Dr. Pradhan had written Insect Pests of Crops. This will be a brief history of entomology with respect to India. Next comes the next topic, evolution of insects. So, insects belong to the phylum Arthropoda, and the preceding phylum of Arthropoda is the phylum Annelida. So, the theories state that insects might have originated from the annelids, and there is a link between the annelids and the arthropods, and that link is the onychophorans, also known as velvet worms. Example of this group is Peripatus. So, the Peripatus serves as a link between annelid worms and the arthropods, because they have both the characteristics of the annelids as well as arthropods, and these insects are fossilized, and these onychophoran fossils date back up to 520 million years ago, which is in the era of Cambrian era. So, next important link between the annelids and arthropods is the presence of Hox genes. Hox genes are group of genes which control the body plan of the embryo along the anterior to posterior axis. So this body plan is seen similar in the arthropods as how it is expressed in the ancestral onychophoran like Hox gene pattern. So according to this Hox gene pattern only, they are linking the annelids might be related to arthropods. There are many theories which deduce upon the possible ancestor of the insects in the evolution process. We will see these theories one by one. The first theory is tracheate ancestor theory or Brouwer's Cambodia theory. So this theory states that the ancestor is a tracheate insect. The trachea is the important or homologous character in the case of the ancestor as well as the insects. So this theory also states that the insects are supposed to have descended from the Onychophora and later in turn from Annelida. So Annelida gave rise to Onychophora, and from Onychophora the insects have arisen. That is the basis of this theory. And they state, according to them, the ancestral insects were apterous. So the ancestors did not have the wings, and they were also wingless and terrestrial. So that is why they have the tracheate ancestor, because terrestrial indicates their respiratory system must be tracheate. So the tracheated ancestor gave rise to the winged insect. So the ancestor of Pterygota was wingless, and it was supposed to have been a Cambodia like Thysanurans. So it is also called as a Brouwer's Cambodia theory, because the ancestor of the pterygote insects supposed to have come from a wingless terrestrial ancestor, which was having the homologous character of trachea. This was this is what the tracheate ancestor theory states. And the next theory is the Myriapoda theory, where Tilliard is the one who gave this theory, and he suggested that both the insects and the Myriapoda group descended from the common ancestor. So he states that both the Myriapoda as well as the insects are closely related, and the common ancestor, the name given to the common ancestor is Protaptera. So Protaptera is the ancestor, and this ancestor gave rise to Myriapoda, and insects is the Myriapoda theory. Next one is Bradley theory. The Bradley theory also states that the ancestor is a tracheate terrestrial apterygote Thysanuran, and this theory also gives examples and also gives the suggestions on how the wings have originated from a wingless ancestor. So according to this theory, the ancestral Thysanuran used to flourish in damp and humid places, and this Thysanuran had a structure called paranotal lobe. So this paranotal lobe this ancestral Thysanuran, it was already air breathing. It suddenly went inside the water and started taking up the aquatic life. So in the fresh water, it was already a terrestrial organism, and from this one, the further descendants of this Thysanuran, they started taking up aquatic life, and here is where the paranotal lobe comes into use. So this paranotal lobe now became to serve as the gills, which helped them to breathe inside the water. So this ancestor was a tracheate terrestrial, and from that the descendant went inside the water and it started to breathe using the gills, and then these paranota, which became to serve as the gill, they started getting enlarged, and they were also used to navigate inside the water as huge oars. So 2 or 3 post-cephalic segments were also the gills were enlarged in the 2 or 3 post-cephalic segments, and now this overgrown paranota, which are like oars, they started propelling the insect, the aquatic insect, into the air. So these started serving as the ailerons, and this the aileron organ finally became the wings. So the aquatic ancestor then later came back to the ground. So and now this is how the paranotal lobe has gradually transformed into the wings. This is what the Bradley's theory states. Next one is the Handlirsch theory. Handlirsch theory states that the ancestor was a trilobite. So previously we had seen the ancestor might be Thysanuran or Onychophoran or Myriapode, but this theory particularly states that the ancestor of insect is a trilobite, and they are suggesting an example of how the parietal lobe which are present in the trilobite, they became the wings. So these the homologous character here is the parietal lobe, that is the lateral expansion of the trilobites. Now we will come to the phylum Arthropoda. So the Arthropoda phylum have a few important characters. The name Arthropoda means the arthro means joint and poda is foot. So the foot and or the appendages, they are segmented and they are jointed together. So the body itself is segmented and these segments are grouped into 2 or 3 regions called tagma. As we know, in case of insects, they are grouped into head, thorax and abdomen. So similarly, all the arthropodans have a group of body regions where individual segments are joined, came together to form body regions. So this process in particular is called as tagmosis and it is very specific to the phylum Arthropoda. Next one, they have renewable chitinous exoskeleton, which means they grow by molting and they shed the body exoskeleton every time and they grow into a new or develop, they can develop a new exoskeleton all the time. And the body is generally bilaterally symmetrical and the body cavity is entirely filled with blood. So they have an open circulatory system as opposed to the closed system as we see in humans and other mammals. So the entire body cavity will be filled with the blood. That is why the blood is called as that's why the body cavity is called hemocoel and the blood is called hemolymph. Next, the alimentary canal is tubular. It starts with mouth and ends with the anus from the anterior to the posterior end of the body. The heart is dorsal in position and also the brain is dorsal in position, whereas the nerve cord is ventral in position. Their muscles are striated muscles and they don't have any cilia like structure on their body, and the appendages are always paired and they are segmented appendages. That is why the name of the phylum is called as Arthropoda, which means joint foot. Next, we will see how further the phylum Arthropoda was classified. So originally phylum Arthropoda was supposed to be, or it was thought to be classified as 7 classes: Onychophora, Crustacea, Arachnida, Chilopoda, Diplopoda, Trilobita and HEXAPODA. So this was the original classification, but further studies and further research has given rise to a new type of classification where phylum Arthropoda is further divided into 4 subphylums, and these subphylums are Subphylum Myriapoda, Subphylum HEXAPODA, Subphylum Crustacea, then Subphylum Trilobita and Subphylum Chelicerata. So the Subphylum Myriapoda further consists of the classes Chilopoda, Diplopoda, Parapoda and Symphyla. And the Subphylum Crustacea consists of the group of crustaceans, and the Subphylum Hexapoda consists of the classes Columbola, Protura, Diplura and Insecta. And the next group is Arachnomorpha. So this Arachnomorpha group is further divided into Subphylum Trilobitomorpha, which consists the extinct marine class of Trilobita, and the Subphylum Chelicerata consists of the class Arachnida. So this Mandibulata group consists of the individuals which have mandibulate mouthparts or biting mouthparts, whereas the Chelicerata, they have the chelicerate mouthpart, which means they have a pincer like structure called chelicerae, which will help in the feeding, as well as in case of Arachnida it has the venom containing mouthparts. We will further see classification of first we will see the class Trilobita. It is it comes under the subphylum Trilobitomorpha, and this class of Trilobita consists of extinct marine arthropods, and we can see only from the fossil records. They are usually sub-elliptical in shape, and their exoskeleton, as we can see, it is almost elliptical and it is only dorsal in position. This blue colored highlighted part is the exoskeleton. It doesn't cover entirely the body. It is chitinous in nature and it is sub-elliptical, and it is divided longitudinally into 3 lobes. We can see 1, 2 and 3 lobes. That is why the name of the class is named as Trilobita, and the body regions are divided into 3: cephalon, thorax and pygidium. These are the 3, and they have a single pair of antenna and they have various numbers of biramous limbs. These are the important characters of the class Trilobita. Next comes the class Arachnida. Arachnida is classified under the subphylum Chelicerata, and the name of the subphylum Chelicerata is derived from chelicerae, which are pincer or fang-like appendages which present usually near the mouth. And this chelicerae are only the source of the poison gland or the outlet of the poison in case of spiders where they sting. So usually Arachnida consist of spiders, scorpions and mites, and these are terrestrial, and they have been divided into, their body is divided into three regions: prosoma, mesosoma and metasoma, and they have four pairs of appendages without any antenna, and usually the respiration is done by trachea and buccal as they are terrestrial in nature. Next comes the Subphylum Myriapoda. So the classes Chilopoda and Diplopoda are together, they used to be called as Myriapoda, and now they have also clubbed together with Symphyla and Pauropoda. So four classes combined together make up the Subphylum Myriapoda. So in which the Chilopoda and Diplopoda are very important, as Chilopoda consists of the centipedes as well as Diplopoda comprises of the millipedes. And centipedes are the poisonous group because they have the first claw. The first claw which is present in the first pair of legs is modified into a poison gland, and poisonous claw is present in Chilopoda, whereas in case of Diplopoda the poisonous gland is absent. So another important characteristic feature which sets apart the Chilopoda from Diplopoda is presence of one pair of leg per segment in case of Chilopoda, whereas as the name indicates, as Diplopoda, which means di means two, so two pair of legs are seen per segment in the Diplopoda. Next is the Subphylum Crustacea. Crustaceans are usually aquatic and terrestrial, and the phylum is made up of crayfish, crabs, woodlice and lobsters, and they have always been covered by a hard shell-like structure throughout all over the body. So that is why the name Crustacea came. And the body is divided into two regions in general, a posterior cephalothorax and anterior cephalothorax and posterior abdomen, and they have two pairs of antenna, one pair of stalked compound eyes, which means the compound eyes are borne on a stalk-like structure, and they have five pairs of biramous legs. And as they are both aquatic and terrestrial in nature, their respiration is majorly done through gills. Now we will come to the Subphylum Hexapoda. The Subphylum Hexapoda is further divided into four classes. So previously the classes Columbola, Protura and Diplora were considered as orders, but under Insecta, but as the recent classification indicates them and considers them not to be insects, they are non-insects, so they have been given a separate class status. So the classes Columbola, Protura and Diplora along with the class Insecta or Ectonata. And this class Insecta is further divided into the subclasses Aterygota, Paleoptera, Polyneoptera, Paraneoptera, Endopterygota. So the subclass Aterygota consists of the orders Archaeonata and Zygentoma. We will see the further orders which are present in each subclass and their characters. So the orders which come under subclass Paleoptera are Ephemeroptera and Odonata. And the subclass Polyneoptera are otherwise called as orthopteroid orders, and they are Plecoptera, Trilobita, Orthoptera, Phasmida, Dermaptera, Mantophasmatodia, Embioptera, Dictyoptera and Xeroptera. Next comes the orders which come under the subclass of Paraneoptera. These are also called as the hemipteroid orders, and they are Socoptera, Theraptera, Hemiptera and Thyssanoptera. This Thyssanoptera is the connection between the hemipteroid orders, which is Paraneoptera, and the Endopterygote orders. So the Endopterygote orders include Megaloptera, Raphidioptera, Neuroptera, Mycoptera, Lepidoptera, Trichoptera, Diptera, Siphonaptera, Hymenoptera, Coleoptera and Strepsiptera. So the order Neuroptera is further divided into two as Megaloptera and Raphidioptera, and it used to be previously clubbed under the same order Neuroptera, and now all three orders have been given a different order status.